Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Relationship Renovation podcast with Tarah and EJ Kerwin.
Hello, everybody.
As always, we are so grateful to be here, grateful to our listeners. Thank you for all of your support, all of your 5-star reviews. We are overwhelmed by it.
Yeah.
And also for reaching out and giving us some really great ideas for future podcasts.
Yeah, and today's going to be, I've been actually looking forward to this all week.
We've been waiting a while to have her on.
So I'm excited about who's on, and I'm excited about what we're talking about. So I'll introduce Cristina Piastrini. How are you doing, Cristina?
I'm doing very well. Very happy to be here with you.
Very happy you're with us.
Cristina is a psychotherapist at our center.
Another one of our lovely, lovely clinicians.
Yeah, she has a really interesting background that brought her into sort of the therapeutic world. And so I think I'd rather, if it's okay, can you tell us a little bit about your sort of journey into doing therapy?
Well, I come from the anthropological field, and I came to Arizona to work as an anthropologist for several years. And then I decided that I really wish to work with real people rather than just material remains or abstract concepts. And I decided to become a therapist. And I'm very happy about that. I love doing it. And I'm using very much similar systems in conceptualizing people's lives. It's working out.
What was translatable? Like, what went from anthropology to psychology? Like, what sort of linked them together?
Well, the common thread is the observation of human behaviors, human systems. Anthropologist takes it from a cultural standpoint or the observation of cultural systems. And also biological systems. So something that I really absorbed from anthropology that I'm bringing into my psychotherapy practice is the notion of interacting systems.
Which there are many.
Yes, and there are many.
Interacting systems. Help us understand that a little bit more.
Interacting systems, how the natural system, or in the case of humans, would be our genetic predispositions, the limitations of a given environment. I mean, how do we adapt and survive? So we kind of do that because we have innate knowledge that keeps us into adaptation, but also we are using culture and information.
Yeah, and that jumped out, like when you're talking about interacting systems between sort of like who you are genetically, what you deal with as far as, growing up and
so
culture.
Epigenetics is a model of interactive systems. That is a very good example right there.
Epigenetics, yeah.
Epigenetics,
and then
exactly.
And then bringing that into like when we're working with couples, because you have two individuals, right, that are bringing their own systems, their own cultural pieces, their own environmental influences together. And so that's probably like, what have you found around your work with individual versus couples and the system integration piece?
I think couples are way more complex.
Yes.
I mean, you have two individuals, each one bringing personal history, personal cultural system, intergenerational system, themes of anxiety, generational experiences in the context of cultural change, because, anyone who grew up in the 70s has had a different experience in comparison to anyone who is growing up now or anyone who has grown up in the 90s, of course. So you have that. And then you have the relational arena between these two people, which constitutes a system in itself.
Right.
Why is that a system in itself? Because it would not exist if you did not have two individuals interacting in a dyadic manner.
And I think that's some of our best work that we do with couples. Like sometimes when they come in and present for session, they just feel like it's the other person and they have a hard time recognizing that there's this system that they've built with a lot of complex factors. And when we really help them understand, and when you're bringing kind of your own intellectual component into this from the anthropological sciences, it's like, whoa, it's so different. And it takes them out of this just realm of like the two of us are suffering. And wow, look at all of this other stuff that we've brought in. And if we can understand it better and then somehow try to meet in the middle and make them unite so the system can function as a whole-ish.
The system can function as a whole.
Right.
Yes, exactly. And then, therapy itself brings in another system.
Exactly.
Another level of discourse.
Yep.
And at times substances bring in another system, which is the chemical, basically.
Right. Yeah.
So there are so many systems stuck up and combined into making what is the experience of a couple.
Yeah.
Well, and then for today, so this podcast is very different today because it's actually around a different system we bring in with our family pets.
Yeah. So Cristina came to us with the idea. She's like, why don't we talk about pets and how they sort of fold into people's lives and relationships and maybe families? What made you think of that, Cristina? Like, why was that something that you thought would be, valuable to talk about?
Well, it is not a surprise that pets are so close to us. Most of us have pets. So all of this is knowledge that exists in the back of our minds. But what brought it up into the forefront of my attention is I counseled several couples who have experienced the death of a pet, and this event had brought to a destabilization of the system, with grief, with increase of anxiety, some emotional disconnect. So I realized that there is not much literature that addresses this particular issue. And I also realized how important pets are, the type of function the several functions that pets fulfill within the family system. And those are very, very important functions.
I love that you brought this idea to us because I never would have thought of it. And then once you did, I started thinking about it. And really, because we have 2 dogs and 2 cats and 4 kids, so there's 10 of us in the house, really. But I was like, wow, yes, they bring us so much love. They bring us so much comfort. They bring us protection. They bring us safety. And like, what happens if one passes? Like that, there is this grief that it's like losing one of our family members. And if they bring all of these different systems or components like safety, protection, love, cuddling, snuggling, attachment, and then they leave and that we don't understand like how that can affect the system, I could see how people would disconnect, get really confused, and just feel a great sense of loss. So thank you for this idea, Cristina. It is very impactful. And I think for our listeners, it's going to be very, very impactful too.
Maybe like a good launching point is like, why have humans done that? Like, why have we brought animals into our houses, right? I mean, traditionally, I assume like animals were out, right? They were, for food and, maybe they had some utility, but why did we bring animals into our houses?
Well, that's a very interesting point. Why? Because mammals are wired in very similar ways. They respond to very similar stimuli, respond to very similar systems of communication. And it's very easy for humans to interact and receive very gratifying responses from animals, from pets, mammals, especially dogs and cats and, dolphins, whatever. But when it comes to the average family, it is usually dogs and cats. I mean, they just sneak in because in many ways we are wired the same way. And they respond to us and we respond to them. And then there has been the whole phase of domestication where humans have purposely bred characteristics that made pets more responsive, more easy to live with, more nurturing. I mean, those are all qualities that we as humans wanted to interact with.
Yeah, more like us, right? Like that as they've been domesticated, originally they sort of like they helped support our existence, but eventually they became accustomed to like interacting with us in a way that I assume they, especially dogs, like that they evolved towards, sort of developing human characteristics, right?
Well, they already have human characteristics. I mean, in the sense that, even in wolves, there are measure systems that are very similar to humans. Similarities in neurobiology. So wolves, dogs, mammals in general do care for the young for a long time. They breastfeed. Their brains are very similar to human brains. They basically respond to survive systems and the stress response system and thrive system with the social response system in ways that are very similar to humans.
I know for me, like, the dogs in my life over the year, there's a certain amount of like security. Like, even though our dogs drive us crazy sometimes when they're like barking or whatever, but there's something about having the dogs in the house also that make us feel more safe,
Sure, and sometimes it can be an illusion. I mean, if someone walked into my house, I don't believe that my dogs would be able to defend me, but they would certainly make a lot of noise.
Deterrent.
Yes.
They look scary, maybe.
Yeah.
Until they don't, because they start licking you.
Yeah. I know also, like, when you were saying that about, there was something, I just had this image of when we brought our twins home. And I remember, like, our dogs, like, or it was our dog at that point.
Bobo,
we just had Bo at that point. He was like really protective right away. Like, he
right
went up and
away.
Like, smelled them, kind of, I mean, like, and seamlessly integrated them into our lives.
And if there was a stranger that came, like, he would literally go right where the twins were because they were babies, infants, they couldn't walk. And he would just make sure they were protected. It was amazing. Because at first I was nervous, like, how is Bo going to respond to these two little colicky babies? And he responded with like this very like paternal instinct almost. Yeah, that was cool. I remember
that's
that day.
Wonderful. Yeah.
So, we always kind of do our best to weave whatever topic that we have here into relationship, whether that's two individuals or a family structure, right? And so what do we think, like, what's the role that animals, domesticated animals, play like in our families? What do we get? Like, Tarah, like, what do you get out of having Benny and Bobo and what are our cats' names again?
Indian Doc.
Indian Doc, sorry. They're like tertiary.
For me, it feels like loving connection and just adds to our family. I mean, if I could have goats, and I would. I'd have a whole farm. But for me, it just brings connection, almost like community, and just this feel-good, loving energy that our kids will remember always with our family pets, like just something very nostalgic. And, my whole family, my grandparents, they all each had a horse for their kids. Horses would walk through the home. And my grandpa always had a dog. Like, I was always from that, and cats on the kitchen table. Like, I try not to do that, but for me, it just feels very similar to like my own childhood growing up. And it was just always a part of that. And it's interesting too, because I'll have friends that are, from different cultures where dogs or domesticated animals aren't a thing. And they get very uncomfortable around in our home where there's cats and dogs. And I'll try to like just be really curious because like maybe in their culture, like they're seen as dirty. Mm-hmm. And so I'm just like, yeah, like it's just so different. I always explore that when I have a friend that's from a very different cultural background where domesticated animals are not a thing. I'm thinking more of the Persian culture right now with one of my best friends.
Yeah. Do you think it's just woven into our social norms that like you just having a pet is just a part of the family? It's just something you do, that sort of fills in the gaps?
Fill in the gaps. I mean, animals, from an attachment perspective, your pets will give pretty much constant, unconditional, reassuring attachment, love. They will be present throughout family changes, processes of disruption, relocations, divorce, other, events that produce disruption and grief. So animals are
a constant.
Yeah, they're
yes.
less likely in a time of like sort of stress or destabilization.
They're not reactive.
Yeah, they're not gonna become anxious in their attachment or avoidant in their attachment. They're gonna love you and want your attention and want to be connected to you no matter what.
Sure. I mean, from an attachment perspective, pets have an incredible ability to provide important self-object needs, such as cohesion, self-esteem, calmness, soothing, acceptance.
That is, I can't tell you, Cristina, so we do genograms and life timelines of everybody. And when I'm talking to an individual of a couple or just an individual, hey, how did you, especially someone who's got a pretty disorganized, chaotic background where there might be trauma, how did you cope? And I can't tell you how many times I've heard, I just hung out with my cat or I hung out with my dog.
Yeah.
That they created that object safety relationship for a young child. Yeah.
And it's a very important presence. And then again, it's not just, that contact is actually beneficial. It kind of stimulates the production of the good hormones, which are good for, make you feel good and are also good for your health.
Yeah, instead of feeling alone or isolated in difficult moments, you've got this little furry thing that feels comforting and loving and connecting.
All right, so how many couples have we had, Tarah, over the years who one member of the couple will say, I'm envious of the dog. I wish that I got the attention that the dog gets in the house, right?
I can't even count on one hand. We have so many.
Every time I
they
come
get
home,
jealous of the attention they're. And I try to explain that dogs and cats are so much less complex than humans.
Yeah, the
and
relationship
that they can't
is
talk
less.
back.
Yes.
Yeah, we do though. We have to sometimes process jealousy of attention that one of our pets might be getting, but it can go into some really good material. Okay, let's talk about levels of affection. And, if you're jealous of your dog, we got to talk about that.
Also, animals have the capacity of facilitate social interactions. You take a dog for a walk. How often does that happen, that people come and talk to you just because they notice the dog or they say hello to the dog?
It's a way to connect.
It is a way to connect.
Yeah.
Yes. It's a safe place to be.
And I think there's also that, I don't know if it's an assumption, but I can't tell you, this is more movies I'm coming from, but a male per se will be I'm going to go get a puppy so I can pick up some chicks.
Yeah.
But that idea of a person who has animals is this softer, kinder, more gentle soul. Isn't that interesting? It's we apply traits to humans that have pets.
Apparently, it is a correct way. It's not inappropriate to expect that a person with a pet is actually a kinder person. Research indicates that people who own pets practice more empathy, are more capable of establishing relationships, have more developed ways of nurturing and forming attachments. So the guy or the woman with the dog who are very dedicated to their pets are not doing so because they have failed their attempts to form human connections. Not at all.
Yeah. I definitely think from my early adulthood, I had a dog, and I felt like it was almost my training in being a parent in a lot of way of having to be responsible for something other than myself for the first time. like I think I was talking to you about it, Cristina, like having to come home, that you just can't stay out all night because, you have that dog at home that needs to be taken care of, or dealing with somebody doing something that's against you, what you want, like, again, I had this dog who, like, it was when I was really kind of tight on money in my early 20s, and I had like one loaf of bread left and my paycheck wasn't, and the dog ate the entire loaf of bread, and having to deal with that, like, okay, it's just
I don't
a dog.
eat your dog food. How dare you eat my bread?
Exactly. But yeah, it's just like, it teaches, I get that empathetic thing. It teaches you that, like, you have to care for other things,
And in a couple, you also learn how to cooperate.
Exactly.
I mean, you do put in practice your parental capabilities even before you have a child. One of my couples, and I asked them if I could talk about their experience. Yeah. They realized that they can actually think about having a child following an experience in which they had to care for a puppy who had some serious health problems.
Aww.
And that was at the beginning of their relationship. Mm-hmm. And they kind of got to know one another in this process of together taking care of the puppy. They went as far as establishing how much of their finances. I mean, they were both willing to share the expenses of the vet. They were both willing to take turns into taking care of the puppy. They cooperated. And that was an experience that really strengthened their relationship, fostered an enormous amount of trust.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because they saw one another in action in very caring and responsible ways.
Yeah.
And in some ways provided a concrete platform for them to develop aspirations such as, maybe we should stay together, get married and have children.
Yeah,
because we saw one another in action. That was not an easy thing. We had to spend money. We had to arrange our schedules. And it all worked very well.
They built confidence in their relationship by caring for like a special needs dog, being really united in that front, and then that confidence that they could work together during a difficult time, like really helped them kind of have that confidence, like we could do this in the future and maybe do this with a human.
Yes. And kind of make them more attractive to one another.
Absolutely.
They really appreciated and admired those traits.
Yeah, they saw aspects of each other that they might not have otherwise seen.
Exactly.
Well, you know what's interesting? This reminds me of another couple that I had. This was a long time ago. She really, really, really wanted a dog. She had always grown up with dogs. She was from the Midwest. He was kind of like a curmudgeon, like, I don't want dogs. I don't want dog hair in my, I like to have my freedom. I don't want to. And so his thing was like, if you want a dog, you're going to have to clean up all the poop. You're going to have to feed it. I don't want anything to do with it. And that is exactly how it showed up in their couple's relationship too, around her own emotional needs. He was not willing to go outside of his comfort zone. And unfortunately, they didn't work out, but it took them some years. But I'm just like, I just remember that. Like, yeah, he was like, that's all on you. Like, not willing to give himself into her needs even a little bit around having a puppy.
I mean, that makes you wonder how is he going to be as a father? I mean, what's going to happen if other units are brought into the family system?
Guys, how often really do we think of pets having such significant roles in our relationships and with ourselves?
All right, so I've been waiting for this all week. So can we talk about our dog, Benny?
We can. Christina,
will you be our therapist right now?
Absolutely,
okay.
yes.
Okay, you guys get to hear a little pet therapy.
Can I set this up?
I think so.
Okay, so
nervous.
a few summers ago.
2 summers ago, honey.
2 summers ago.
COVID summer 2020.
I had to go the boys camp that I help run in Maine. I had to go the entire summer by myself, and Tarah had to stay home with the kids because of the whole COVID thing. And one of the last things I said as I walked out the door for 3 months was like, Tarah, please don't get another dog while we're gone. While I'm gone,
our
please
kids
don't.
Had wanted to get another.
Please
puppy.
don't get another dog. And Tarah, what happened?
Well, we heard about like a little break-in to this pet store. And we were at the park one day. It was just me, the twins, and our older dog, Bo. And this one neighbor was talking about that this pet store got broken into and they stole all of these puppies. And that there were a few puppies left, and the owners, the glass was broken. They had to like basically adopt these puppies out in order to shut their little pet store down for a little bit to rebuild it. And I was like, okay, we're just going to go.
Irresistible.
We're just going to go there. We're just going to check
Sounds
it
like
out.
a Disney movie.
And then on the way over, my little son Jojo was like, Mommy, what should we name the dog we get? And I'm like, well, we don't even know if we're going to get a dog. But somehow we came up with the name Benny before we even walk into this, broken pet store that had been robbed. And
That's interesting.
it was. And so we walk in and we just saw there was literally like a litter of these 3 puppies they looked very not approachable. Like they just were yapping. And I was like, oh God, no, no, no. And then this woman brought out little Benny. He must have been like 8 pounds at the time. And he had these long floppy ears and he looked like a Benny. And we saw him and we literally had him in our lap in the car ride home 30 minutes later.
Yes.
And there was our Benny. And now he's like 80 pounds.
And Benny is my nemesis.
And Benny is like a little human that wants to be loved all the
my
time.
God.
And he has very poor boundaries.
We call him Benny Bad Boundaries.
But he is the most snuggly, cuddly, loving,
he barked at
neurotic.
me for 2 weeks straight when I returned
Really?
from camp. He barked at me like 2 weeks straight.
He knew that you didn't accept him, honey.
So, how did you find out that there was a new dog in the household?
I think she...
It was like the 4th of July weekend.
Yeah, I think she just sent me a picture of him. And
how can you resist this cuteness?
I mean, he was super cute. And so that was...
Did you see that coming?
Well, yes,
Kind
just
of
knowing
you did.
Tarah,
Yes.
I knew she was kind of looking for a distraction. I was gone. It was a tough summer. So I wasn't entirely surprised. But now that I'm thinking about it, it laid my groundwork for my relationship with Benny in some ways, because I didn't make the choice, right? Like I didn't say like, oh, I want this dog. And so it sort of like, it's originated my sort of like struggle with powerlessness with Benny. Because also Benny is like, as I described earlier, he is incorrigible. He does not learn lessons. And so he makes me feel powerless. And then the way in which he came into our life, I felt powerless. And I really have to work to like Benny. And it's like, I love Benny because like this morning I got back from the gym and I gave him a little hug and, gave him a kiss. And so I love Benny, but I don't always like Benny.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
yeah.
And when I'm giving Benny attention, Christina, listen to this. EJ gets super jealous.
I get a little jealous of the physical attention. Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm not going to not hug and love on my dogs because my husband gets triggered. Well, we got to talk about that, EJ.
But Benny doesn't have good behavior. Benny's like eats kids' sandwiches and
he's still a little puppy
binges on stuff and pukes all over the place.
It's all good. We got to love him and accept him for who he is.
So
Christina,
he's a little bit of the black sheep in the family. Maybe.
Yes.
Ben is the black sheep.
Benny is the black sheep and black dog with little golden ears. He's so cute. Okay, sorry.
Yes.
Interesting. And you're not jealous of Boo, right?
I'm not jealous of Bo at all. Bo's my guy, man. Bo's got great boundaries. He's responsive. If you're like, hey, Bo, don't do that. He remembers. He's mellow. He's a cool guy.
So hold on. I just had an epiphany.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay, EJ. So what that reminds me of is judgment. That because Bo feels more simple and he meets your needs and he's like easier, that you can deal with that. But when you have something more complex or somebody that's a little more anxious or neurotic, that's more difficult for you to handle, like me, right, at times.
Yeah.
And I used to feel that judgment from you around, like, why can't you just be more calm and chill? Well, that's just not me. And that you have a really hard time being okay with that.
Yes.
Sorry, see how we can relate your uncomfortableness with Benny to even how you would deal with my anxiety.
3 months ago, I took Benny for a walk and he was acting like a total psycho every time we passed another dog. And I looked at him, I said, and because he was like yanking me, and I was like, Benny, who do you think is in charge here? And then I was like, oh my God, like he's just completely confronting me with like, I want to be in charge. I want to control the situation. I don't like when people are like, this is my time. Why can't it be mellow? And you're right, Tara. It's the same thing. Like I struggle sometimes when like, if your anxiety is coming up and like I'm having like a mellow morning and then your anxiety is sort of like intrudes upon that, I have to be very aware to not be judgmental of it.
Benny, if you're listening to this podcast, thank you for teaching EJ how to be loving and accepting and unconditional, even in your own neuroses.
So do I have to stop judging Benny in order
You need to work on yourself and be curious about your feelings towards Benny, which would then relate to me.
So, but Ben is lovable, even within his neurosis, even within his disrespect for
he is lovable.
So instead of focusing, this is so great, Cristina, instead of focusing how Benny, aka or our partner, keeps doing these things that annoy us, what makes us love them? What makes them lovable?
Exactly.
Totally
Maybe he's more lovable precisely because he's disrespectful, rebellious, a thief. Is that possible?
That's a hard sell for me.
Well, better start working on it. We're going to follow up this podcast.
I'm working on it. I mean, yeah. I like Benny. I mean, Benny is a good guy. Like
he's just being himself.
He is. He's just himself.
Being himself.
And like, I mean, here, one of the things though about like pets is like once you have them, you got like 10, 15 years with them. And so it is like a person in your household that it is another personality.
It's part of your life for a while.
Because think about this. Okay, here's a total other thing from ours. So our cats, which are like the most independent cats in the world, like did not interact with us for like 2 years.
At least.
And Tara like was like, I don't like those cats. I want to get rid of those cats.
Oh my God.
And
oh my gosh.
And it totally triggered all of your abandonment. I'm not important.
Oh my
those
gosh.
Cats could
this
give
is so true.
a crap about you for 2 years. But then now
they're like little cuddle muffins.
Yeah, it took them 2 years.
You're right, honey. They weren't fulfilling my needs.
They were not meeting your needs.
You guys, this is like a massive therapy session while we're doing our podcast. Like literally, this is all coming out for me right now.
Well, this is like a whole thing, right? Like equine therapy, and there are, what is it? What are they called? Like animals that are certified to help people.
Companion, therapy animals.
Therapy animals. I mean, all of that. I mean, it's definitely beyond just domestication at this point where like animals do have some sort of therapeutic, our relationship with them has a lot of information.
It's very complex. Yes, there is a lot of information. There are a lot of processes, systems. I mean, they kind of interact with your neurophysiological system. I mean, they release hormonal responses, neurotransmitters responses. And that's also what you do with the dogs. I mean, this is an interactive process.
And just imagine that first time when even if it's yours or not yours, when you see a little itty bitty puppy or a little itty bitty kitty, and they're like the cutest things in the world. And, they're still cute when they get bigger, but there's something about whatever hormones happen when you see this little itty bitty ball of fur. You're just like, it's kind of like when we see a baby. It's like,
it's so interesting.
And then they grow up and they're not as cute anymore.
And they grow up and they're not as cute. But then there is this capacity to make symbols. I mean, my own dogs are 2 demons, and I get a kick out of it. One keeps on biting me. I mean, they are really difficult dogs. They are not nurturing at all times. Now I kind of like this, I like this kind of rebelliousness.
Their indifference to your needs.
Disrespect for my authority, indifference to my need, capacity to find the worst possible outcome out of any situation. I mean, I kind of appreciate this kind of demonic, rebellious, aspect of them. I find them adorable at this point. I mean, I understand that not everyone could do that, but there is something adaptive and something
adaptive is a good
cute.
word.
Yes.
It's interesting when you were talking about like the cuddly animal, I was just thinking like how our relationship with animals, or, I guess with any sort of stimulus, that like when our partner and us can have such different reactions to it. Because when you're saying like, oh, I see a puppy and I just think of how cute and cuddly. And to me, I think of like 15 years of a commitment. Like that's the first thing that comes into my mind because you brought up like getting another animal like a month ago. And I was like, well, first of all, like we have like freaking like, how many living beings in our house? Like 10. And I was like, isn't that enough? And so for me, it's like an animal is like a commitment.
Could you say this is a similar reaction to having children? I mean, is that a cliche? I mean, usually, from an anthropological standpoint, women are the ones who bring forth and impose this project of children. So women tend to see that kind of nurturing response, whereas men may be a little bit more detached and see that as, from a very practical standpoint, how that is going to look like in terms of investment, sacrifices. I mean, can one make a comparison? Is it still valid?
Right.
I think so. I mean, it's because it's not that I don't love them, but it's just that like I know once I commit to something, I just know how I am, that I'm committed. Like if that dog comes into the house,
you'll be responsible for it.
I'm going to be responsible till the day it dies, whatever happens, good, bad, ugly. It might drive me crazy. Like I know I'm going to commit myself to that. And to me, that comes with a lot of weight, I guess. And with Tarah, I think it's just like, it's that nurture piece where she's just like, I just want to love this thing and it's going to bring more like amazingness into our life. And so
I know it is. And I think that's a good, because I know one of the things Cristina really wanted to talk about too is just like when we lose a pet and how that we don't give enough attention to like the grief. And I know like in my years of working with people, they'll feel like embarrassed, like, oh, I know I'm really emotional, but like my cat just passed away or my dog. And I normalize like, no, like losing a pet is like losing a family member. Don't minimize it. Don't feel shame about it. And like help them go deeper. But Cristina, how do you approach when you're like working with these couples and loss of a pet has been significant, has really destabilized, like you said? How do you go about working through that grief with a couple or with an individual?
I help them recognize that this is a great loss, as you said, similar to the loss of a person, a close member of the family, maybe even a child. So I tend to validate their feelings and help them understand the gravity of the event. And that's it. I mean, I help them find words, name feelings, and undergo a process of grief.
Yeah. What an interesting thing, just harkens back to something you said earlier about the information it offers that couple that you talked about they went through the experience of having a pet and they learned so much about each other, and seeing your partner go through grief, and seeing how different people feel it, and how different people are willing to be in it and other people are avoidant of it.
Well, also there are other functions that are now missing when the pet is gone. I mean, the capacity to buffer anxiety.
Oh, that's huge.
Yeah.
Because of the soothing that an animal, a pet can give us. And then we lose someone and we go home and just everything feels different.
Empty.
Empty. Yeah.
Unbuffered.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder what the percentage of people who, when their pet dies, get another pet to replace it within like 6 months. It's got to be like incredibly high, right?
Oh, that's an interesting.
That I don't know. That's interesting. I mean, there are, a pet fulfills so many important functions. I mean, are they getting the pet because it's going to restabilize the couple's or family system?
Mm-hmm.
Are they getting a pet because it is helping them feel loved and all the benefits from your good hormones, good interactions, and everything else? But certainly, I mean, having a pet in the family is an incredible, again, buffer against anxiety. It's an element that unites people. There are little rituals, take the dog out for a walk, talking to the dog, talking from the dog's standpoint at times. How many of us fake like, we are giving voice to the dog and saying little cute things.
Yes.
So, I mean, all of these are very important things, and each of these processes can be of incredible support for a couple and a family.
Absolutely. Our hope from this podcast is just like we're always striving here to help individuals become their best selves together, if it's in a coupleship, and also bringing in animals and our pets and how they can teach us so many things and all the things that they do give to us, and how we can grow by really understanding and digging deeper about us and our relationship with them. I mean, I've just had a few aha moments in this last 40 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. We sort of took this out of the box, and I could feel like this podcast gained momentum as we went on. What was interesting was when we started personalizing it, when all of us started talking about our animals, is when it there was just so much information, and it was so heartfelt that our relationships with our animals really get us on a heart level, and couples spend so much time up in their head, right?
Yeah.
And that the way we talked about it, once we sort of got a sense of momentum, was everything was from our heart and the way we feel. And I think that might be another just amazing gift that animals give us, is they don't access our frontal lobe, they access our heart, and that's
true.
Yes. And how can we generalize that to our partners?
Yeah.
Accessing our heart more to our partner like we do our animal, our pet.
So go out and don't tell your partner that you're getting the dog, and get one, and it will
highlight some of those.
It will take you through hell first, and then it will bring you together.
Well, Cristina, thank you for the wisdom you bring here as a clinician, and to the work you do with individuals and couples, and for bringing in this idea of a podcast around our relationship with pets, because it's fulfilling and there's so much to it. We could talk for hours about this.
We should let clients come in with their pets.
Oh yeah, we've had that before.
I've had a number of people over the years bring pets in.
Yeah, we sometimes, when we have to bring our dogs in, because some people, they're allergic. We just have to, when we have our dogs in here, we have to call clients to make sure that it's okay.
Benny's been in a few sessions.
Oh my. Yes, he has.
All right. Well, thank you again, Cristina. This has
my
been
pleasure.
Really fun. It's always fun to talk to you. Definitely
you.
here, but
Same
just
thing
anytime
here.
we talk, it's super enjoyable.
Something here.
Very wise person.
And so let those pets teach us some life lessons about ourselves and in our relationship, and keep loving on them.
So please, follow us on Instagram. We are at relationship_renovation. You can like us on Facebook at He Said, She Said Counseling, or you can search for Relationship Renovation on Facebook. And don't forget to also check us out on TikTok. We are Relationship Renovation.
And if you have questions or feedback, send us an email at info@hesaidshesaicounseling.com. Yeah, take care of yourself. Take care of each other.
Yes. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.
Me and you just singing on the train. Me and you listening to the rain. Me and you, we are the same. Me and you have all the fame we need. Indeed, you and me are we.